Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight in Eswatini, rights groups protest the latest lot of US deportees to arrive under a deal between the Kingdom and Washington that critics say is unconstitutional and morally problematic. Also, a going nowhere. The agreement that gave some African exporters tariff-free access to US markets lapsed a week ago, and it's unclear what comes next. But some business leaders think its expiration could energize the effectiveness of the AfCFTA, the continent's own trade area. And Cape Verde's one win away from a World Cup place that would have been unimaginable a decade ago. The archipelago's squad faced Libya on Wednesday, and fans on both sides are on tenterhooks with it all to play for. But first, protests sprung up in Eswatini on Tuesday as demonstrators slammed the arrival of more US deportees, calling it unconstitutional. Now, 10 foreign nationals that US authorities have described as high-risk offenders from countries such as Jamaica, Cuba, Laos, Vietnam and Yemen touched down in Eswatini a day earlier. Now, they're the latest to be transferred under a controversial bilateral agreement between Washington and the African Kingdom. Bella Jacobs tells us more.
Mbabane High Court has become the new battleground over the controversial migration deal between Eswatini and Washington. According to several NGOs, the agreement, worth more than $5 million, has allowed the arrival of foreign nationals, some with serious criminal records, who are now held in the country's maximum security prisons.
The judge is of the view that this is a constitutional matter. This is a view he has expressed before. And so he has advised that he will take the matter to the attention of the Chief Justice so that he quickly constitutes a constitutional bench to deal with the issues that are raised in the pleadings.
Civil society organisations are demanding greater transparency and want to know why Parliament was never consulted.
We want this matter to be clear and transparent because our taxes are at stake. The government must acknowledge that there was an agreement, and according to the Constitution, it should be first debated in Parliament before any signing.
For many women, the concern goes beyond finances. Security is the main worry.
It's very painful to know that criminals from elsewhere could come and could cause problems here. What is our government thinking? We have children here.
Other African countries, including Ghana, Rwanda and South Sudan, have also accepted US deportees under this controversial program. Human Rights Watch has urged nations to reject these deals, warning they breach international human rights law.
Well, the spirit of the AGOA trade deal between the US and several African countries is restlessly in limbo. The agreement that allowed tariff-free access to US markets for some goods exported from Africa ran out a week ago. The Trump administration had indicated it backed a one-year extension, but for now, amidst the US government shutdown gobbling up legislative bandwidth, it's crickets. But some African business leaders think that a step back from AGOA could deliver just the distance Africa needs to pull together and use the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Free Trade Area, to better long-term effect. For a look at this, I'm now joined by Hilary Ando, the founder of Fashion Nexus Ghana, which is behind the Business of Ghana Fashion Summit. Hilary, thanks so much for speaking to me. Now, you're all about leveling up Ghana's fashion ecosystem. From your perspective, how has this uncertainty about what's happening with AGOA affected export-dependent sectors within that landscape?
Yes, thank you for having me. But yes, AGOA, it's a bit of panic, right, and hesitation. You have people who had built entire supply chains around AGOA. You have production facilities that were developed, based on AGOA. And then also you had, investors who are investing in all these supply chains and production capabilities. And so now there's hesitation and there's caution as well. So there is a bit of people a little nervous, but I think it is not necessarily a bad thing.
So you're saying you don't think it's a bad thing. Now, I mentioned earlier that, there are some who see this as an opportunity to shake things up, to change the trade model used to support the continent's export-dependent businesses, and focus really attention on making the African Continental Free Trade Area work better for in African interests. How do you see that practically working?
But I think it's a moment for us to move away from panic and think about the possibility. How are we trading regionally? We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and it's supposed to promote trade on the continent. Regionally, are we trading? We have incentives under the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to make it easy for Africans to trade with each other. So imagine in a country like Ghana, where you're adding value. Let's say you're sourcing your cotton from Burkina Faso, and you're finishing in Ghana, and then you're trading to other regional blocks. So I think that is where the AfCFTA comes in, and that's how people, I think, can pivot and take advantage and continue trading a bit more regionally.
So your focus really is Ghana's fashion landscape, and we mentioned that that big gathering that you're putting together, looking at how to bring together all the various component parts that make it a functioning business. So where currently do you think things are unraveling, and what do you think could realistically do with some mending?
So absolutely. So we need to have this ecosystem of fashion. You have this value chain, and it is, you might producers, you have educators, you have policymakers, you have financiers, traditional banks, and investors. But usually they're working in silos, and they all form a part of the value chain. So the idea behind the Business of Ghanaian Fashion Summit and year-round capacity building initiative is that we bring the ecosystem of fashion together to help develop and scale the industry. You need to have a conversation where designers are speaking to manufacturers that may not necessarily say, I need you to place an order of, like, let's say 10,000 pieces, but let's say I can accommodate 500. Because when you're helping develop a sale, etc., you need to have a bit of leeway, right? So we want to be able to say that, listen, work with each other. I'm a designer. I have an order for 500 pieces, help me produce that order. Because once you're able to fulfill that request, guess what? The orders get bigger and bigger. But for the manufacturers to be able to do that, you've got to invest in that. And that's where the other players come in. What policies are being designed to help upskill and uptool manufacturers, right? How are development partners helping in terms of, if we produce and we scale, how do we trade with neighboring countries beyond the continent? Yes, the continent, and then worldwide as well. Yes.
Hilary, and I thank you so much for breaking down perhaps some of the long-term opportunities that hopefully may still lie ahead of Africa's export-dependent sectors like your own in fashion. Thanks very much for your time. Now we head to Cameroon, where the president has emerged for his re-election campaign just days before the vote. Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of state, will run for his 8th straight term. The 92-year-old made his first public appearance on the campaign trail, speaking for 25 minutes to supporters of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement at a rally in Maroua. Despite fierce criticism of his human rights records, the credibility of the electoral process, the country's security and economic challenges, and challenges about his own health, Biya is still widely seen as being the frontrunner for the election on October the 12th. Now, Africa's qualifiers for the 2026 FIFA World Cup are entering their decisive phase, and Cape Verde are just a win away from a World Cup place. Analysts say that this confirms the promise that they've shown over the last few years. But this would scarcely have been believable just 2 decades ago. The West African archipelago only has a population of around 600,000 and would become the second smallest country after Iceland to qualify if they win one of their last 2 qualifiers over the next week. And they face Libya on Wednesday. Our regional correspondent Caitlin Kelly breaks it all down for us.
Cape Verde is just one match away from making history, as the country's Blue Sharks arrived in Tripoli on Tuesday morning, ahead of Wednesday's game against Libya, a team actually coached by Senegal's Aliou Cissé. A win would see Cape Verde off to their first ever World Cup qualification. Led by captain Ryan Mendes, the team so far have been met with success in the continental qualifiers, beating Cameroon in the final group stages in Praia. Back home on the West African island, excitement is high, and for most fans there's little room for doubt that their team will make it to the 2026 World Cup in North America.
I'm sure they're going to win and make it to the World Cup. And why not bring the trophy home too? This team's the pride of Cape Verde. I just hope they keep the same motivation in every match.
I think it's thanks to our goalkeeper we won. He's our hero.
Yeah, the first time they are going to World Cup, that would make us, the country would happy with them for sure.
A win against Libya on Wednesday would be a massive step and a historic moment for the country, but it isn't necessary for their success. With a 4-point lead in their group, the Blue Sharks could still qualify even if they lose to Libya, as long as they beat Eswatini in their final game next Monday at home, which would make them the world's second smallest country to qualify for its biggest tournament.
Caitlin Kelly there for us. Now, for the last 24 years, the tomb of Pharaoh Amenhotep III has been closed to the public because of renovations. Now, tourists, though, can once again go underground to discover one of the jewels of the Valley of the Kings. The Egyptian funerary monument, dug up 3,000 years ago, is one of the largest tombs in Luxor. The reopening comes ahead of the official inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo in November. Clem Mola has more.
It took more than 20 years for the tomb of Pharaoh Amenhotep III to reopen its ancient doors. Since 2001, some 260 researchers and specialists have worked tirelessly to restore the monarch's final resting place, marred by centuries of neglect.
The restoration process of the tomb was very precise because the tomb had suffered greatly from neglect, and some parts were in poor condition.
The works were funded by grants from the Japanese government and UNESCO. Amenhotep III ascended to the throne as a teenager and died after a reign of some 40 years marked by prosperity and stability. His tomb, one of the largest in the Valley of the Kings, was first catalogued in 1799 by French archaeologists during Napoleon's brief conquest of Egypt. The site was then rediscovered in 1915 by British archaeologist Howard Carter, but it had been emptied of its funerary treasures.
The tomb, of course, was unfortunately discovered completely empty, so it was stolen before. Even the sarcophagus, only the lid of the sarcophagus is still there, and it was broken to several pieces, more than 200 pieces.
For years, Egypt has been banking on its ancient history to boost its tourism industry. Highlighting archaeological discoveries, the government has built and renovated museums and tourist sites throughout the country. The latest addition is the Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo, which will open in November.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now, but thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.
Trust is our most precious asset. Every day, around the world, France 24, RFI and Monte Carlo Doualier join forces to bring you free, independent, verified, balanced information that fights manipulation, and in 21 languages. France Média Monde has been awarded the Journalism Trust Initiative Standard, which guarantees the professionalism and reliability of our international news media with a score of 100%. Trust is not automatic. It must be earned and cultivated. Thank you for your trust.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.